Music is the most competitive industry right next to professional sports. You have to trade the good gigs for the great gigs. There is no right way to start. There is no right time to start. You just start. People are going to have opinions. You may as well just accept it and lean into it. There is no shortcut. You only get great at anything by doing that thing a lot. People will show you their red flags early on if you let them. So let them. You think they're not gonna say, is this person really taking their music career seriously?
Today's special guest is an award-winning actor, drummer, and mentor, Stephen Michael Martin. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Stephen, before we get into it, we asked that our last guest leave a question for our next guest. So the question that I have for you is, what is the number one thing that you're trying to accomplish currently in your life? What is that top priority?
Everything that I'm doing is with the intention and the purpose of like, how do I do more for others in a positive way?
Nice. So behind the music, it's like, how do I provide some community service? How do I give back? And how do I actually help others? I mean, that's very rewarding. I mean, you're helping someone else. There's no better satisfaction than that, to be honest.
Right.
Well, Stephen, for someone who's never heard of you before, how would you describe what you do and the type of music that you play?
So essentially, I am what we call in the industry a hired gun. That's the slang term. A more technical term is a session player. So I haven't been a band member for any band in probably like a decade. What I do is a lot more independent, which is I do all of my own booking, my own management, my own promoting, and I get booked with a variety of clients. Most of the time it's musicians, other times it's audio engineers, other times it's producers, sometimes it's directors, sometimes it's composers, but I essentially jump from studio to studio and play drums on different tracks. I also do movie soundtracks. I also do a wide variety of different things where you need percussion, you can hear drums in it, but it's not necessarily limited to just playing drums on songs for bands.
Nice. That's a lot that you got going on. Did you do everything right out the jump, or did you kind of gradually grow into like one thing and then producers, promoters, shows, all of this stuff? Like, how'd you get started? I
knew from the very beginning of my career I wanted to be a session player, even though I had very limited understanding as like a 17, 18-year-old kid of what it meant to be a hired gun. I knew it would give me a lot more freedom to work with people I really wanted to work with. And even more than that, demonstrate the versatility of my talent. And what almost confirmed this desire for me was when I was 18, I signed my first contract with a record label. And that was when I really had no understanding of the music industry. So I was very much in that mindset of like, I'll sign any deal that someone gives me. I just want to get like the ball rolling on my career. And a lot of the details in that contract basically said like you can do other shows with other artists, but as long as it doesn't interfere with what we're doing. You can do other recordings with other artists. And the truth was I had a manager who was so overbearing, so unbelievably controlling that none of us could do anything without him overseeing it every step of the way. So I was with that label for like 3.5 years, and every step of the way I realized, well, first and foremost, I only get to tour and record with one band. That's nice in the beginning, but I also knew I could fluently play tons of different styles of music outside of just the heavy rock that we were playing 100% of the time. Yeah, we didn't sleep. We didn't get to rest. It was always just like jumping to the next thing. But we were only playing heavy rock music. And I love heavy rock music. I grew up listening to heavy rock music, but I wanted to tap into other genres and basically demonstrate for people like, oh, I can play heavy rock, but I can also play country, blues, punk, metal, reggae, like you name it. I knew deep down I could play every mainstream style. And so after those 3.5 years, I unexpectedly got my first session gig with a rock singer who she had come to the label's studio that I was signed with, because she had these tracks she was working on and they weren't quite coming together. I think the easiest way to say it is like her drummer wasn't really making the cut. He was kind of giving her more headaches than he was just professional sounding beats. So she reached out to me and I was like, of course I'll play drums on your tracks. And that quickly led to, again, she was having issues with her drummer. So she called me one night and she says, we have this show that it was like 2.5 hours away. And she says, how much would you charge to play drums for this show? It's only a 45-minute set. It's already sold out. We just need a drummer we can depend on. And that was like the light came on of, okay, here's my chance to step out of just being signed with one label and to actually fulfill the dream of becoming a session player. So needless to say, shortly after that, I terminated my contract with the label I was with because I really believe deep down I can do this myself and I can do it better than this label is doing it. And sure enough, as soon as I left them, then I started my own booking, my own management. I was doing my own promoting, my own branding. And that was well over 10 years ago. And I've been doing it all myself for those 10 years.
So it sounds like growing up, you were like, I have an idea where I want to go. I don't want to be stuck to any specific label. I want to be able to do my own thing. I want to collaborate with artists. So you kind of had that direction of like, this is ideal, but you're like, I also got to get paid. So I'm going to sign a record label until I kind of figure everything else out. So it kind of just grew into that over time, but that was always the goal. So I was looking at some of your online content and you went back and you were talking about how you first fell in love with music around 7 years old. Mm-hmm. You're watching MTV or some of the music and this and that and whatever. So what was it that made you say, aha, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life? It's like, that's crazy for someone to know at that young age, something inside of them has got to be inspired, motivated, something's got to click. So what was that thing that really was the it factor for you or made you make that decision?
We're about to go deep. Are you ready? I grew up in an extremely broken, damaged family. My earliest memory was my parents fighting in the middle of the night, and I was probably 5. I was sitting in the hallway in silence, just listening to them screaming at each other. So they divorced when I was 7. And, it was myself and my 2 siblings, and all of us were very angry and kind of confused because at that age, you don't understand why your parents don't love each other anymore. And so I turned on MTV and I just watched all of these rock stars and punk rock stars and metalhead rock stars. And I was just like absorbed by it and submerged in it. And deep down, it was like, this is what I'm going to do. Now that I am much older, so keep in mind, everything I just mentioned, that was 25 years ago. Now that I am looking back on that with a lot more perspective, what I understand is, as a young child, I must have thought, if I can reach this point of like success and notoriety and popularity and hopefully wealth, then that will allow me to escape from this very broken, damaged family. I could be wrong about this. I've never fully confirmed it, but I'm pretty sure the whole 10 years, at least for the majority of it, my grandparents were not only paying for my drum lessons, but they lived in Fair Oaks, California. I lived in Pollock Pines. So once a week, either grandma or grandpa, they would drive from Fair Oaks up to Pollock Pines, drive me to Shingle Springs to take a 30-minute drum lesson that they were paying for, back to Pollock Pines to drop me off, and then back to Fair Oaks. As an adult, I'm like, that's a tank of gas right there, just to basically invest in this little kid's dream that realistically at that point they were probably like, this probably will never turn into a successful career, but at least we're giving him something to do to deal with all of these heartbroken emotions that I was living through.
Yeah, that is deep. Yeah, he definitely took me there. Now, for you, it kind of sounds like it's more of an escape. It's like I have to figure out how to block out the noise, get rid of the internal chatter, and what can I do to distract myself to just live essentially. So it's like survival mode. Do you think that that's one of the main reasons that people kind of lean to music? Do you find that escapism is really why people like enjoy music so much?
It's hard to say, because the musician's mind, I've learned over time, is much different from the mind of someone who just listens to music and they're not involved or invested in creating it. Obviously, with all people, it depends, but I think music provides a very divine form of escapism that usually doesn't get talked about very much. Like, in some way or another, when we listen to music and we are really like submerged into it, it takes us to a different place, psychologically, emotionally, for some people, even spiritually. The interesting thing is, I think a lot of people perceive escapism as something bad, right? You're not really facing what you're going through. And it's like taking a good look at everything that's happening in the world today. Yeah, if you turn on some of your favorite songs and you escape for a while, that's probably more healthy than most people would even admit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably a better outlet, music, than something else. But you're getting the drums and you're kind of have this chaotic like background of like parents are fighting this, that. So if you could give yourself advice, the 7-year-old you, what was that thing that would have helped? Is there even something that someone could have told you that would have kind of helped you navigate life at a young age?
At 7, the advice I would have given myself, I don't have any. I wish that I had some kind of philosophical thing that I could share with myself, but very much like you said, I was in such survival mode that at that point in my life, it wouldn't have mattered what anyone told me, even if I was talking to myself. I would have loved to go back and told myself, like, people do care about you, people are listening to you. But they didn't, and they weren't. That's why I chose music. I would have loved to tell myself, like, just relax, you're gonna be fine. But when you tell someone who is in like borderline primal survival mode, you're gonna be fine, that doesn't really help. You know, when you're barely just living day to day, and in my case, I was leaning on music as a form of survival itself. You know, it gave me something to invest in and to focus on, so I didn't have to be, you know, brutally aware of the surroundings that I was living day to day. There's probably tons of advice that I should give to my 7-year-old self, but I don't have any. You know, looking at how I was living and what I was going through, I was lucky to make it out of all of that.
Congratulations for coming out the other end and being a successful musician. When you were growing up and taking the lessons, and I'm sure a lot of other artists are kind of there going down this path of like getting mentors, getting lessons and so on and so forth, but then people often come and they doubt you. So what was your support system like? Did your parents ever say, oh, this is like stupid, like, why are you doing this, let's do something else? I know your grandparents were making the drive, so actions speak louder than words, but did you ever have people try to talk you out of it? And what did you tell yourself to keep yourself going?
I have people who try to talk me out of it today. I've been in the industry for 14 years. I have performed and recorded with Grammy Award winners, CMA Award winners, Emmy Award winners, 1 or 2 #1 hip hop artists, a 12-time platinum Warner artist, a 3-time charting Sony artist, multi-platinum producers, and I still have people in my family who have no knowledge of the industry. And they will tell me like, yeah, it's really hard. You know, it's not exactly a stable lifestyle. So you might want to think about something else. It's like the ship has left the harbor. I'm out to sea. My dad is the most extreme critic you have never heard of. Now that took years and years and years for me to unlearn, because as a really young child who was a drummer, but I also loved movies and pop culture and entertainment news and studying celebrities, what I noticed was, like, as I was looking up to my dad, he had something judgmental and negative to say about all of them. I'm not talking about like the up and comers, right? Who, yeah, maybe they falter a little bit. He would talk about these A-list actors and A-list musicians who were making hit movies or selling millions of records. And there was always the, yeah, but, you know, this is one flaw, this is one shortcoming of theirs, or this is something they could have done better. And little did I know how much I was absorbing that. And so becoming a teenager, at that point, I was writing and producing and releasing all my own music. And I had this like very rigid perception of the rest of the world that they were judging me to the unbelievable extremes that my dad judged all artists. And he still does it to this day. Now I'm just much better at tuning it out. But it took until like my late 20s to really pause and be like, this is someone who never had the opportunity to succeed creatively. And so he just became a critic for anyone and everyone who either was succeeding or at least was trying to succeed.
Do you think that's a form of love, though? What I mean by that is your dad is saying all of this condescending stuff, is tearing you down, but is the position of his heart in the right place? And is his words just coming out incorrectly? Is he really trying to say, hey, I want you to do better. I want you to be successful. And is he critiquing you and tearing you down verbally? But is the position that he has actually like, hey, I want you to succeed. I want you to be mindful. And I just don't know how to tell you that. So by being unable to tell you that, this is my only way I know how to communicate because of his own upbringing. And is there kind of a silver lining that you think that's there? Like, did you ever get the hint that maybe he does want you to succeed? Or was it really just, I just don't understand this guy. He's just always nagging me for something. And that's just how he is.
Well, I'll give you my answer, but first give me your answer. The reason I say that is I don't have kids. So I don't know how parents communicate with their children in sometimes abstract ways of, I do support you, I do want you to succeed, but maybe from an adult's perspective, I have to do it in a roundabout way. So have you had those experiences as a parent?
Not as a parent, but as a child. I'll kind of give you a little bit of my background. I came in from a very religious household. My mom constantly praying. And for me growing up, I'm like, okay, cool. Like as a kid, you don't know if you believe religion because you're taught religion or if you're, kind of spiritual because you believe it yourself. So I would go hang out, rent rooms, do whatever. And I would come home to visit my mom. First thing out of her mouth was, you're going to hell. And I'm like, okay, thanks, Mom. Peace out. Like, not, hey, how are you? What's going on? This, that. It's like, we need to save you. We need to sit down, pray. We need to exercise something out of you. I don't know, like the 9 yards, right? So what I ended up realizing out of that is that, one, my mom doesn't know how to communicate, which is obviously doesn't know how to. But two, it's like when I take a step back, I realized she's not saying you're going to hell because you're not being spiritual, you're not praying or anything like that. She's worried for me. If I take back and try to understand what her heart's saying, her heart is trying to say, I want you to have salvation. I want you to be saved. There's something more to life than your 9 to 5 or hanging out with your friends or going clubbing or doing this. And so can she say that? She just doesn't have the skill set or the aptitude to communicate that way. What she knows how to say is, you're going to hell. But again, behind those words, the position of her heart that's making her say that was from a place of love. And that's why I asked that question is there maybe a similarity between our parents where they don't know how to communicate and they tear you down, but really are they trying to say something else? Is their heart trying to communicate something else that we are just missing?
I've never thought about that. What I do know, when I was very young, and I have carried this into my adulthood, I interpret things very literally, almost to the point where it's like a running joke with my friends. They'll be like, this person isn't a very good singer. Oh, you should tell him that. I always say that. Oh, you should tell him that. Because I hear that and I interpret it as very literal, right? Even though I know even though in my heart, it's like, I'm not saying it's very literal. I'm saying I interpret it literally. So coming up as a young kid who like really wanted to succeed without even realizing I was entering music is the most competitive industry right next to professional sports. I didn't know that as a kid, being raised by my parents. I just knew I wanted to do music for a living. So it's very possible that my parents were trying to communicate from a place of love. If that were the case, I think the only change I would have made, like if I had been a parent parenting me, would have been acknowledging like that I take things very literal. And as an artist, I took things very much to heart. So when something was said to me, it wasn't like I would just take in those words and, kind of sit with them peacefully. I would take it to heart to such an extreme and it would just stay with me for years, right? So when you say very like extreme things to a kid who kind of takes things in like that, now I understand it was a great risk for them. I think they could have gone about it more positively and in a more uplifting way. But again, they did not speak the language,
Well, with all of the critics out there and musicians that are just starting out, they're facing that criticism and maybe they don't know how to process it yet. What advice would you give them?
I've gotten really good across the years at tuning it out, but that's only come from so many years of like taking things to heart, letting it destroy me emotionally and then psychologically, and then eventually coming out of it. So here's something I discovered recently. If they're releasing their music online and they're afraid of people laughing at it or making fun of it, create a piece of music with the intent for them to laugh at. Have a little fun with it. I've been doing this now more than ever on my Facebook page. I have 70,000 followers on my professional Facebook page, but I'm reaching somewhere between 380,000 and 1.2 million people on a monthly basis. With that comes a lot of trolls, a lot of haters, people who have no idea what I actually do, but they see my posts and they just see it as like something that's provoking them to troll me, right? And so instead of getting upset, instead of getting angry, instead of thinking of all these negative things I could say back to them to prove a point, I keep myself in check to have a little fun with it. I'll give you a great example. This happened about 20 minutes before I got here. I put up a post last night that was something along the lines of like putting together a playlist of a specific style of music. And there's one person who always has something non-favorable to comment on these posts. And this particular one, I'm still curious why he thought this would be the best thing to comment. But his exact words were, "Smell my hairy armpits, period." But think about it. The post was, drop a song that's in this style of music, right? And we're going to put it into a playlist. So when I saw that, I'm like, there's got to be a song out there with that title. And I found one. And so I wrote back to him in the comments section and I posted a screenshot of that song. And I was just like, I had no idea other people knew about this band. Laugh emoji. For my mental health, it's way better. It gives me a good laugh. It obviously gave him some outlet to write whatever he wanted to write. Then I just am able to let go of it. So for young musicians who are afraid of people judging them, instead of fighting against it, instead of worrying about it, instead of doing everything you can to avoid it, lean into it. Give them something to judge. Go into it with the intent of acknowledging people are going to judge this. I may as well give them something to judge, right? Or people are going to insult this. They're going to make fun of it. Give them something to insult and make fun of. The young musician wins, and the troll or the hater, they also win. Everyone wins.
I mean, that's a good perspective for the online personas and stuff like that to deal with the millions and billions of people that the music may be exposed to, but sometimes it's people that you can't really shut off or you can't really troll, like your friends, your family, especially in high school or even your co-bandmates and stuff. When you are getting the negative criticism from the people that are closest to you, how do you cut people out of your life? Like, how do you process that, or how do you deal with that chatter?
The real life haters, that's a subject that doesn't get talked about enough, right? Everyone has internet trolls. Everyone has online haters. But the people who actually like have the nerve to say to your face any kind of negative criticism. First and foremost, negative criticism face to face. I understand this is a controversial take, but it is an incredible tool for humility, right? Because it does not matter how talented, skilled, or knowledgeable or experienced you are, you still have areas that you can fine tune. Instead of immediately figuring out how I'm going to respond or prove a point or have the last say, I am notorious for just sitting with it. Just sitting with it and sometimes not thinking anything at all, just letting their words sort of sit with me. More often than not, I can pinpoint areas in which they're right.
Yeah, there's probably a little bit of truth to everything, but if they haven't walked your walk, if they're not successful, is it even worth them trying to control your life or tell you what to do? I mean, they're bystanders, right? Oftentimes. So I think maybe if they haven't actually done the work themselves and they're just throwing shade, like, honestly, you know, the old saying growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me type of thing. I mean, I get a lot of feedback on even the podcast on, hey, you should do this, you should do that. I'm like, okay, are you running a podcast?
Right.
You know? So it's one of those things, like, how do you musicians process that? Do you just channel that same mindset? Like, yeah, whatever. You wait till you do it.
Well,
and then you can talk.
First and foremost, and this is something you know just as well as I'm sure all of the listeners know. Have you noticed everyone everywhere is an expert on things they've never done, right? People who have never launched a podcast, they're telling you what you should do with your podcast, right? People who have never made a living playing music, all of them have opinions on what specifically I should do with my career. I had a great one the other day. I haven't actually shared this with anyone, but someone who had no drumming videos on his channel, what did he do? He commented on one of my videos and he said, "Homie has never shown emotion in his life." My first thought is, if you think I've never shown emotion in my life, you should see any of the movies I've been in, you know, where I rip my heart out for people, figuratively speaking, on camera. But let's say you make the adjustment that people say you should make. They're going to find something else that's wrong with it, right? So now, let's say I made that, I took his advice and I showed a lot more emotion on my face. That's typically not the way I play. I feel tons of emotion in my body and mind, but you don't see that visually because it's all internal, right? But let's say I did it the way he wanted and I showed all kinds of emotion and I moved around energetically and all these types of things when I was recording that video. That same guy would probably find something else that was wrong with it. So what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to make shifts and adjustments based on one person who arguably doesn't know anything about it? Guess what? All the other people who are watching it, they probably have adjustments that they want too. You cannot satisfy everyone. You're not going to. You may as well tap into your own voice, your own way of doing it. And if people don't like it, they don't have to watch or listen, right? Most of the greatest artists we have throughout history, actors, filmmakers, musicians, producers, you name it, they've kind of canceled out that noise and they have tapped into, this is how I want to do it. You may as well just accept that no matter what music you release, no matter what videos you put out, no matter what craft you are trying to master, people are going to negatively judge it. People are going to expect it to be better or to be different. People are going to have opinions. You may as well just accept it and lean into it. It'll be much better for your mental health and it'll help you sleep much more easily at night.
Yeah, I feel like as musicians, you guys are so underhanded. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody wants to give advice. No one's like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. And then people, oh, great. They congratulate him. But you say, the moment you say I'm going to be a musician or artist or a mentor of some sorts in the music industry, it's like, oh, everybody's going to start talking smack. So what qualities does a musician need to have to be successful?
I have a relentless, ruthless level of self-belief. When I was 18 and just getting started, the faith I had in my talent and my ability to make it was rock solid. It was unbreakable. And at 32, it's exactly the same. I think I've kind of relaxed a little bit. It's not as intense, but the level of self-belief that I have had has gotten me through so many brutal times in life where it's like all of my circumstances were showing me not only was it never going to happen, but it wasn't happening then, right? I was living in this is not happening. No matter what I do, it's not working. Nothing is working, right? And in those times, I was still in my own head, thinking about the music business, thinking about branding and promoting and booking and like ways that I could creatively innovate better. I was still working even when people were not giving me work. I think if you can have a ruthless, relentless level of self-belief where even your heroes and your mentors could tell you that you're never going to make it, and you're still in that mindset of, watch me, that's going to get you much further than people think.
And what are the red flags that musicians should start paying attention to?
Too many musicians I have worked with operate from this mindset of because they're talented, they're special. They're not any better than anyone else. They just happen to have a skill. Now, the reason it's a red flag when you come across those musicians who believe they're above other people, that they're slightly elevated because they have creative talent. It actually gets in their way and it hurts them a lot more than it helps them, right? When I go into a studio, I don't want to be surrounded by musicians who think that they're above everyone else, who think they're better than everyone else because they can play their instrument well. Why? That's going to taint the chemistry of what we're about to create. It's annoying to be around anyone who thinks that they're better than everyone else because of a skill they have, right? Doesn't matter if it's music or anything else. So I watch out for those red flags. And fortunately, I've been at it long enough, I can see it from a mile away. But like all things in life, I teach this to young musicians all the time. There is no shortcut. You only get great at anything by doing that thing a lot. Work with a lot of musicians and really be an observer. Watch how people interact. Watch how people play. Watch how people interact with, let's say, like the sound technician at a show or the producer in a studio or even the other musicians in a studio. People will show you their red flags early on if you let them. So let them. And what happens is, first and foremost, you still win because you still have the gig, right? You're still working with that musician, but it provides a blueprint over time. I'm not going to work with that guy again. You know, look how he treated people. Look how he interrupted and talked over people who were trying to communicate in the studio. Look how he showed up and he didn't know his parts. Didn't even listen to the song before he tried recording it. I mean, I could talk all day about red flags, but that's probably the easiest for young musicians to figure out while on the job, so to speak.
What about the local band that's put together with their friends and they're playing out of the garage or in their house or at a office somewhere, and they're dealing with those local band dynamics? Maybe you have the guitarist, maybe there's the singer, and there's the internal fighting like, oh, we should do it this way, we should do it that way. And have you ever been part of those bands growing up? And what advice would you give people that are in a similar situation where they're just kind of a bystander, they don't know what to do? This is their band. Should they find a new one? Should they stick it out? Like, what's the best course of action?
You know what's crazy? I've been so lucky across the years to completely stay out of that. I've watched it unfold many times. I've been in rehearsal with bands where you could tell in a matter of seconds someone is going to start swinging. I think where musicians often get it wrong is, ironically, they don't listen to one another, which is surprising because our whole job is based on listening, right? You can't very well properly play a song if you're not listening to the other musicians. But when it comes to communication, it's insane, the conversations I have witnessed across the years. Musicians I've worked with who have hired A-list producers to travel to them and go with them in the studio and be like, here's what we're going to do to trim the song, to make the song better, to make it more sellable, to make it more catchy. And the musicians who are hiring that producer aren't listening to any. It's like, you understand this is his whole job. This is why he's here, right? Make the adjustments. It's fine. Keep your pride and your ego out of it. I am notorious now in rehearsals and recordings with musicians. I often work with musicians I've never met. I've done sessions where I get a text 2 nights before. They send me the track. I say, I can write and arrange a part for it right now. Rehearse it tomorrow. It'll be good to go for the recording the next day. And I know for a fact if I go in and I argue, well, this is the part I wrote. Well, this is how I want to play it. Well, I'm not quite feeling it that way. Well, your terminology is actually wrong, and you actually mean to say this. It's a waste of time. We could turn it into a 10-hour session where we're going back and forth with all of this unnecessary noise, or you can be a professional about it and say, okay.
So the takeaway there is just be easy to work with.
Yep.
Just say okay and adjust and let whoever's going to lead. You may have your creative differences, but I think you alluded to it earlier. It's like, are you there to serve the music or are you there to serve yourself? So if people are in a local band, maybe they don't have the luxury of finding other artists to collaborate with, and they're just trying to get their name out there, they have to kind of take a step back, reassess, listen to one another, be okay with adjustments, let someone lead, kind of have that humility to kind of make that band successful, or at least give them a working chance at being successful at the least. So with the infighting that some of the bands may experience, maybe that's the takeaway. The secret word is okay. That's the password. That's a cheat code.
Even beyond,
just say okay.
Even beyond the process of making music, there are many musicians who reach out to me on a monthly basis, and everything seems good to go. And then I quote my rates. Turns out they don't have a budget for anything. And most of them are pretty respectful. I've had some nutcases. Oh, those are some stories I could tell if you have time for it. But most of them are pretty respectful, and they'll just say, we don't have the budget for that at this time. Okay. All of it is okay. It saves so much time and energy. You know what you need. I have what you need. If you can't afford it, okay. More often than not, you'd be surprised how many musicians say they can't afford it. I say, okay. And then 2 weeks later, 2 months later, they're emailing me again. And they're like, we got the budget together and we want to do this right. Okay.
So okay is the cheat code for working locally in your band as well as working with producers.
It's not even a cheat code. It's not even a cheat code. It saves so much time and energy. And you're not running the risk of giving other musicians a headache with all of this back and forth. It's just, we are here to serve music, but more importantly than that, how do we serve music? We serve our fellow musicians. That's where most musicians miss the mark.
Yeah. Well, you then went down the spot of like paid gigs, contracts, Zelle, demo, whatever the case may be. So for someone who's just starting out, a musician that hasn't got paid yet and they're trying to break into that niche of maybe charging for their services and service for other musicians, one, do you reach out to promoters and producers? Do they reach out to you? And do you have any tips for new artists that are trying to navigate those negotiations?
I didn't actually start doing what you're talking about until I hit like 30. The first 12 years of my career, it was the Wild West. I said yes to every opportunity, even if it meant playing music I didn't like or working with musicians that honestly I didn't really respect. I just said yes all the time. What came with that was I took whatever they offered, right? That works when you're younger, but as you get older and you have a much more defined understanding of what your expenses are, you cannot let your income be up in the air. You know, the gigs I used to do in my early 20s, I remember mapping out my monthly expenses, and I was living in a pretty like financially reserved way. But I would always think I might get $30 for this show. I might get 150. I just don't know. You can't properly manage your finances that way. So it wasn't until I reached 30 that I created a rate sheet. And here's the thing. All musicians need to understand creating a rate sheet, that's the easy part, right? You sit down with a Google document and you write out what service you can provide and you write out the amount, committing to your rates. Now that takes some discipline because all of those opportunities that come in that are probably just going to pay you whatever it pays, those are going to be tempting, right? That's what you're familiar with and what you're used to. So once you have the rate sheet, it's like, these are the rates. I cannot step outside these rates. And most musicians, I think, have already done it enough. Like, haven't you done enough gigs where you just paid whatever they want?
I mean, the rate sheet is definitely a good tip, but for a new artist who might not have the reach and may not have the audience, it's going to be very tough for them to say no to something. So like when you were doing your first rate sheet and the first time you had to say no, that feeling of like, dang, I don't want to say no. How did you overcome those thoughts? How did you stop yourself from not settling for less?
Most musicians, they want better gigs. They want more money. And they have also found their comfort zone of, yeah, I'll play this bar in front of 3 people for $100 because this is what I'm familiar with. If you're not careful with that, you stay in that comfort zone and you'll be 50, 60, maybe 70 years old still playing those gigs. So you have to give up. For some people, that's a good gig. You have to give up the good gig if you want the great gig, right? The same reason any of your favorite bands or artists are not playing the pub down the street, right? It's not just because of their talent. It's not just because of their success. It's because somewhere along the line, they made an agreement with their self. I cannot settle for less than what I'm worth anymore. And if you are a musician of high quality and high value and high professionalism, how long do you want to play the bars for low money, right? Most musicians, I've done it. We've all done it, where we take those gigs and what happens? Pack everything up, drive out of the parking lot. You don't feel fulfilled. You don't feel like you've contributed a great, memorable experience to the masses. You feel like you experienced what you just did experience, which is you played a bar in front of a few people. If you're okay with settling for that, nothing is stopping you. Musicians settle for that every day. But I think if you want to elevate to the next level and you're serious about elevating to the next level, you have to trade the good gigs for the great gigs. You have to make a commitment to yourself that you are of higher value. And if other people don't see that, let them. Okay. Comes back to the okay. Trust me, the more you stay committed to, I am going to take the high quality, high value gigs for my rate, the universe hears that and it starts to send them to you. And there is no greater feeling, at least in this category of what we're talking about, than making a commitment and getting the results that you want versus not making the commitment and taking whatever results that you have to settle for.
Yeah, that's great advice. You have to go through the growing pains, essentially, if you're really going to take it seriously. Now, you alluded to your social media reach and the content creation a little bit. So how important is that for up-and-coming artists? Is the online presence a big hidden part of being a musician?
It's everything right now. And so many musicians are fighting it, which is mind-blowing to me because it's not like social media is anything new, right? But I'll tell you a quick story, which really paints the picture of how important it is. The industry does not care if you love social media or you hate it. Your fan base doesn't care if you love social media or you hate it. All of that is in your own mind, right? So I had the opportunity 2 years ago to work with one of the most highly talented country artists I had ever met. And I loved her. I saw her at a show and it was just this immediate connection. And she basically said, like, I'd love to get you into some of my rehearsals. Basically, like, have you played drums at least as a substitute, as a backup if my regular drummer ever can't make it. I said, that's great. So I did rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal with her. And sure enough, she had interest from a label. What did they look at? They listened to her music? No. They looked at her social media. And they're like, you're great, but you have 1,200 followers. How are we going to, like, pitch a show to a stadium or an arena when these venue bookers are going to look at the same thing? And then, interestingly enough, later on, she looked into booking a show like at a county fair, right? And she said, here is my rate to perform for your county fair. And they said, that's great. We looked at your Instagram. We can offer you like a third of your rate, which when you found out what a third of her rate was, it wasn't going to be worth anyone's time or energy, right? So people look into you much further than you probably expect, right? When you have that strong social media following, you have a lot more leverage. You have a lot more value you can contribute to the people that you want to work with. If you have an Instagram with 28 followers, if you have a YouTube channel that you never post on, if you don't even have a professional Facebook page, what you're communicating to other people in the industry. I'm not talking just about other musicians. I'm talking about promoters, publicists, record labels, audio engineers, producers, recording studios, all these people that you're hopefully going to work with if you want to work with them, right? If they're looking into you and they're seeing these borderline nothing numbers, you think they're not going to say, is this person really taking their music career seriously? Because I have no fan base. How am I supposed to do anything with an up-and-coming artist that has no fan base, right? But the beauty is the opposite side. You manage your social media well, you connect with your fans, you get new followers every day, you post trending content that gives people value, your numbers are going to go up. Then, when the record labels or the producers or the musicians or anyone you want to work with are knocking on your door, you have so much more leverage to say, I already have this built-in fan base. This is everything I've done on my own. So how are you going to contribute to elevate this to an even higher level?
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. It's kind of like your online resume in a way. But for a musician who just wants to play, that really doesn't know much about social media or is really uninterested about it, where should they start? I mean, it's got to be like a muscle. You got to work it out. And there's so many platforms. There's so much to learn. And it takes away from the creative talent. So if it's that important, like one, probably going to struggle with it a little bit. So how do you overcome that struggle and where do you start?
So I tell this to young musicians all the time. And I wish I could say these are my own words, but this is actually something I learned from Snoop Dogg. There is no right way to start. There is no right time to start. You just start and you figure it out as you go. What I would advise against all musicians of all ages, looking at it too much from a business perspective early on. Now, when I say that, what I mean is, sure, manage your social media properly and professionally. But most musicians immediately get sidetracked with, how do I get brand deals? How do I monetize my content? How do I sell merch to the little bit of followers I have? That's just going to distract you, right? My story of building my Instagram, at this point, I'm at over 50,000 followers. I never thought that would happen. I was actually very late to the game on Instagram. When I terminated my first contract with the first label that signed me, I was out on my own. And I realized, okay, the one thing I can do is manage my social media well, right? I was 21. No one was giving me calls for shows. I wasn't recording anywhere. I was just destitute. But I'm like, what if I just focus on building my social media? It took a while. I mean, there have been so many times my professional Facebook page has just been stuck. And it didn't matter what I posted, nothing was working. And stuck isn't even the right word. I started to see some of my followers start to go down. And it's like, well, what do you guys want? What am I supposed to contribute, right? I just showed up every day and I just hacked away at the tree every day. The people who don't build a strong following are the people who at some point just give up and they just stop. And the people who never build a strong following are the people who never start at all.
Yeah. So for those artists, I mean, just start. Don't worry about making it perfect. Do your music gigs, practice, get better, but it is important. And you don't have to get overwhelmed by the process, but just start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then eventually that will give you the credibility. You kind of alluded to your rates. They look at it, they look into you. So what's the point of creating all that great music if it's not out there for people to consume? So that's the probably hidden aspect of a musician that people often overlook. If people want to reach out to you, if they want to get connected, if they want to get some of your mentorship, where can they find you? Where can they reach out?
On Facebook, it's Stephen Martin Official. On Instagram, it's Stephen Martin Official. And on YouTube, it's Stephen Martin Official. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I got lucky enough when I first launched all my social media pages that handle was not taken. So even before I started posting on them, I just wanted to lock them in to make sure that they were mine. So yeah, I've had the same social media handles ever since I went independent with my career, and served me pretty well so far. It's also easy for people to remember. Like sometimes I'll meet musicians and I'll be like, oh, what's your Instagram? And when they say like Dave Tough 94321_5, it's like, do you want to just write it down for me? Because you just said it and I don't remember all of that. There's something about Stephen Martin Official. I got lucky and it's worked very well. And all of those handles have been mine ever since I got them.
So it sounds like, one, make an easy handle for people to reach out and find you. And two, if they want to reach out, they can message you. They can send you a direct message on Instagram, Facebook. We'll get the links in the description below. We'll also have the lower thirds pop up, so people that want to reach out can easily click in and find that information. Stephen, there's so many different angles that we could take with music. I mean, I feel like for people that are stuck, I think there's some really good nuggets, some really good roadmaps for people to take away and maybe apply things that they could probably apply for their current situation. If you had to give them one additional thought or one comment or thought bubble or advice to the music community for the musician that's starting up, that's struggling, that's trying to figure out how to navigate this industry, what would that encouragement, that advice be for them?
Ask yourself every morning with sincerity and humility what you can do to best serve others.
So in a way, find out how you can serve others through the creative process. Mm-hmm. Not so much the money, the fame, and everything else that comes with it potentially. I know that's the 1% that people often talk about, not the 99, but find the community aspect to it. Do you think that's what pulls you back in constantly? Is it the purpose, the why behind it?
Yeah. No one ever prepared me for this, but 25 years of not just pursuing music, but taking my music career seriously. Because I decided at 7 years old I was going to be a professional musician. And everything was always based around that. What no one ever prepared me for is when you do music for that long, it really changes your relationship with music. One thing my dad asks me from time to time is like, when you're so analytical about music and how the parts are played and how it was recorded and how it's mixed and mastered and how the song structure was designed, how do you just listen to a song? And I told him recently, like, it's an executive decision. Once a week, I will tell myself I'm just listening to music. I'm just enjoying it. So with that said, I know this will probably hurt a lot of musicians who are listening right now, but it needs to be said. Over time, your pursuit of music, your love for music, your passion for music, it will be tested and it will burn out. None of these are negative things. They're just natural things. It happens. So when you concentrate your energy on others, when you devote that same level of commitment, passion, love, everything that you have in your pursuit of music to others, it helps tremendously with those times. Because then you're not just going through the motions for yourself or your own pride or your own ego or your own potential fame and popularity and wealth. Then it becomes much more about, how do I bless this person? How do I help this person? How do I uplift this person? How do I contribute value to this person? That is 100 times more valuable than how do you succeed more as a musician? How do you make your music blow up? So
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think you got to find your purpose in it at the end of the day. The musically said you're going to have your highs and lows, but like, what is that why? When you get burnt out, that I can help someone, I can uplift someone, I can elevate someone, brings you back in and keeps you going to push through the burnouts, to keep creating content, keep pushing forward, is because at some point it's not about you anymore. It's about the people around you that you want to support. So that gives you more of like a bigger cause to pursue. So I think as a musician, new musicians or people listening, like if there are musicians, they should reflect on what is that why for them? What is that thing that's going to keep them going, even though they're going to experience the burnout and they're going to have the highs and lows throughout their career. When you go through that burnout, what do you do to get yourself back into the zone, or how do you deal with the burnout?
it's a couple things. The most extreme burnout I ever experienced around this time 4 years ago in 2022. No one had ever talked to me about burnout. I had heard the word, but I didn't know how real of a thing it was. And looking back during that time in my life, there are recordings I performed on, to me, just like weird, flat sounds. There was no heart or soul or energy because I was really at a point where I didn't have any to give anymore. The best way I can describe it is continuing my path as a musician felt like I was pushing this burnt log down a path. And I had kind of lost the understanding of why I was even pushing the log. So one thing that's very important to understand is experiencing burnout is like getting really sick. It doesn't matter how much you fight it. It doesn't matter how much medicine you take. The only thing you can do is wait for your own natural recovery. And that's what happened to me.
I guess time is the best medicine. It'll eventually pass.
I tell musicians all the time, your music career is always going to be there. You know, whether it's slow or things are moving fast, whether you're getting a lot of opportunities or no opportunities at all, it's always going to be there. So it's fine to take a break, you know. That's not a popular point of view in this era, especially among millennials, we have been sold this whole hustle culture that was popularized obviously by social media. No days off, always grinding. And it's like, yeah, your body and your brain are not designed for that, especially among musicians who our schedules are insane. At my peak, I did 182 concerts in 1 year. That was just concerts. That wasn't songwriting sessions. That wasn't recordings. That wasn't rehearsals. That wasn't music videos. That wasn't radio appearances. That was just the concerts I was doing. I was not sleeping. It was just go, 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 go. And a lot of it came from this, like, I thought that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to hustle all the time. You're never supposed to rest. If you're resting, then you're weak and you're getting behind. And now I'm on the opposite side of that fence. I'm like, if I take a week off and go to Nashville to visit some friends and then I come back, guess what? My music career is still going to be there. You know, even if I'm getting no gigs at all, my music career is still going to be there. So rest while you can and enjoy little things while you can. Music is going to be there regardless.
Yeah, it's kind of finding that balance of finding where that line is where you're going to get burnt out and then realizing it, knowing that yourself a little bit better, and then having more of a balanced approach. It's not about how fast you can go. It's more the consistency, right? Just keep the balance, keep your sanity so you can go for the long run, because you will go a lot further than trying to get there all at once and then burning out and stopping entirely. So yeah, that recalibration is definitely key. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Key Concepts Podcast. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and your music experience and all the tidbits, your advice, and all your experience.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
If there's one takeaway from this conversation, just know that where you are at is part of the process. So thank you for watching this episode of Key Concepts Podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one.